Could that just put him over the edge?
I'm not too sure. I don't think they did well.
He's a bully.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche. Done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tide. I'll live, I'll die for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
They still have a lot of holes to fill.
He didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. No, he didn't get fired. He never got his contract renewed.
Welcome, everyone, to Two Guys in Hockey Talk, Season 5, Episode 26. My name is Pawel the Cat, and I've got my beautiful co-host, Evan Reynolds. Evan, how you doing?
Hey, doing fabulous, man. You know, that intro, he didn't get fired. That just is the highlight of my whole night to keep talking about. Did the guy get fired? Did he not get fired? But anyway, man, I'm doing great. Looking forward to tonight. We didn't know if our guest was going to make it. Just so you know,
he's here. He's ready to go.
He's here, ready to go. Not a big deal. But looking forward to tonight's episode. We got lots to talk around the hockey world, bud.
All right, well, let's get started with our guest liner, brought to you by JR Web Design for all your web design needs.
Hey, everyone. Glad to have you back with us here tonight. We have our special guest, Patrick Williams. We want to welcome him. He is from on the AHL beat, NHL.com, AHL.com. I call him Mr.com, Sirius NHL Radio. Done some work with the Jets previously. I don't know, Bud, Patrick, what you have not done, but thanks for joining us tonight.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So with every guest that comes on the show, we always ask, where did your love of the game first begin? Is there a moment in time that you first watched hockey or saw hockey and you're like, man, I love it, and it kind of spiraled from there to where you are now? Or was it just you got into it later on in life?
No, I think like a lot of people, it was, that, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old time range, and then I remember, like my mom was like trying to like find me something to do. And, it was like, it was winter time. It was like a Saturday night. So she put the game on, on TV that night. And, like I was hooked right off the start, like I just thought the whole thing, like the whole spectacle, right? Like, like I remember as a kid being fascinated by like the red light, like, when there's a goal. I thought that was like the coolest thing. Like when you're 5 years old, it's like those little weird things that catch your attention. And obviously as you get older, you learn the game and, just sort of all the storylines that go with things, it's as much what's on the ice, but also just off the ice as well. Like all the speculation, all the drama, all that kind of stuff.
Did you play for fun or play at any level when you were younger? And
yeah.
What position?
Yeah, mostly defenseman, kind of up and off the glass is how I would describe my style. I think probably like a lot of people, and I played up until about 17, 18, and then it was pretty clear that it was time to move on.
But the more important question is, were you right-handed? Because if so, you can really come back now and be high in demand for a lot of
things. No, unfortunately, I was a lefty and pretty much a dime a dozen type player.
Actually, what's crazy about that right-handed thing? So I remember, like, I was a boy that grew up starting in like 1979 while the Vancouver Canucks. That was my very first team. Just kind of shows my age. I may look young, but I ain't so young. But one of the interesting things is early on, there was never a lot of left-handed shooters. Very few people in the 80s had left-handed shots. And so it was unique, to get your left wingers. And a lot of times a right-hander was on that left side. And like defense, all of a sudden, I don't even know when it came in, Patrick, but all of a sudden there was like nothing but left-handed. And now you have this demand for right-handed shooters. What do you think happened?
Yeah, I don't know if that was maybe how, maybe there was at some point some sort of just everyone sort of, because left-handed shooters typically are right-handed people. So you would sort of, right-handers are the majority of the population. So you would sort of, I don't know, like that's my theory, but just sort of like everyone sort of, one person does it. So everyone just sort of picks up and, follows along and that, that's, I guess, how it comes to be. Maybe there were more left-handed sticks available back then, and you go to the store and you're like, all right, I'll have that stick, and
like everyone else, so they like to blame. They have conspiracies on Bettman, so maybe Bettman genetically engineered something, to make it that they had a lot of left-handers coming into the league. So anyway, thanks for playing along with that little side conspiracy.
So you've been writing all over the place for various different levels and different leagues. So you've been, in the Winnipeg Sharks organization, writing there. You've written for the NHL. You're right now writing a bit more for AHL. Anyone who looks up your name, just look up Patrick Williams, and every pop up from Google or whatever search engine you're looking for, there's an article, right? I guess let's talk a little bit about the AHL and kind of what you're seeing this season so far. Because as you know, a lot of what the NHL does oftentimes will transition from the AHL, the development league, even testing out new rules or things in the league. Your thoughts on the season so far? Who should people be watching out for in terms of teams potentially going to the final and winning? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, I mean, to start, I'll say, I mean, when I started at the AHL level, I've kind of come full circle. I worked myself up to the AHL, then worked myself up to the Jets beat, did that for a long time, then circled back to the AHL and kind of took on a league beat, which is a whole kind of different can of worms as it is. But I remember when I started, the AHL tended to be more of a place for kind of your older veteran guys to kind of go and play out the string. And, you had a lot of kind of like 30 to 35-year-old type players that maybe they'd had a cup of coffee in the AHL or in the NHL at some point, but for the most part, it was something of a place where your career went to end. And like the shift, when I came back, the shift was so dramatic in terms of the amount of investment that NHL teams put into their AHL operations. There was that real emphasis back in 2015 of moving your affiliations a lot closer. So that was the whole West Coast expansion or movement. And it really, back like 20 years ago, if you had an assistant coach, you were doing well for yourself as a team in the AHL. And now you got 2 or 3 assistants, you got a goalie coach, video coach, you got the strength and training coach. I mean, it's pretty much like they run it just like an NHL operation. So that's the big thing.
Before Evan jumps in, so I have a quick question about that relocation thing, because I know there's been rumblings in Edmonton here, where we're located in Edmonton. Of course, Bakersfield is the farm team. They've talked about moving them, especially since Vancouver just moved their team up here to Abbotsford, which has been really cool. I like the jerseys. Your thoughts on if that could possibly happen, and if other teams, and I do want to get into this a little bit later, what's been going on with Carolina's team, right? And what's going to happen, or not technically their team.
Yeah, the Carolina thing. I mean, how long do you have? I mean, but yeah, with Vancouver, and then you got Calgary went up last year, playing right in the Saddle Dome, which is a whole different dynamic, both for the management and for the players, right? Like when let's say when Calgary was in Stockton, like you're far away, you're pretty removed, which can be good and bad, right? Like it can be kind of good if you're in a slump, you're not playing well, or maybe your game just isn't where it needs to be. You can kind of fly under the radar a little bit. It's a lot harder when you're playing in the same building that the NHL team plays in, and management's there every single night. And, they see the good, bad, the ugly, that kind of thing. So it's a much different development atmosphere. There are pluses and minuses probably depending on the player, depending on the situation. But as far as Edmonton goes, yeah, I know that's there was a lot of speculation last year when the agreement with Bakersfield was up for renewal, and I talked to a lot of different people with the Oilers, and everybody insisted, really on and off the record, that they really like Bakersfield. They put a lot of money into the building down there. I think they kind of like the idea that it's not in the fishbowl environment. Like you send your players down and they get away from it, right? And they can kind of just focus on playing and development, and they're not kind of like, having the media hanging around and everything goes with, playing in a hockey crazy market like Edmonton. And I saw that up close in Winnipeg with the Moose when they came in from St. John's. That was a huge transition for a lot of players. A lot of it was good, like, certainly from an off ice standpoint, like for the players who have families, you knew you would be in one city the whole season, and you didn't have to like shuffle back and forth. So that was good for them. But it definitely is different having that level of scrutiny. There are other teams that have their prospects in the same market, like San Jose, for example. But that's obviously going to be a lot more low key and not the same level of intensity. But yeah, like when you're in a Calgary, a Winnipeg, a Toronto, I mean, Laval's essentially Montreal. Abbotsford is, it's just a quick drive down the road from Vancouver. So yeah, there's a lot more pressure that comes at young players. And you're talking, I mean, guys that are 20, 21 years old, right? So like these are young kids, and you have to manage it carefully. That's for sure.
Okay, so around Carolina, maybe update everyone on the Carolina situation, because I know not everyone, without us going into detail, you have a lot of details on that. Maybe explain to them why Carolina doesn't have their own team, and then just tell us what you're hearing is how it's going.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So Carolina used to be with the Charlotte Checkers, and they won the Calder Cup in 2019. Great team, a lot of good young prospects. A lot of names that fans will recognize, like Marty Natchez played there, for example. A lot of good young talent was there, and somewhere along the line there was a falling out between Carolina and Charlotte. They just wanted two different visions of how to run things. Because remember, the AHL, when you're an independently owned team, you have player development's all great, but you know what? You have bills to pay. You have tickets to sell. You have, I think sometimes people lose sight of that, right? Like, whereas if it's an affiliation that's owned by the NHL team, it's just a different dynamic. Like they'll eat some of the losses from a financial standpoint in order to prioritize development. Whereas, a team that's independently owned, hey, they need to win games, right? Like, especially if you're in a market like Charlotte, you have a lot of competition. You can't be a bad team there. You can't be losing games every night and hope to have any sort of standing there. So they had a falling out, long story short. That sent the Hurricanes off to Chicago with the Chicago Wolves, who were coming off their own affiliation ending with Vegas. And then that you also mixed in the pandemic years with that. So that was a whole other dynamic. And so you had that. So, and the first, it was 22-23, they won a Calder Cup again with Chicago and Carolina. So everything looked great, right? Like, it's like, okay, back-to-back championships. And because the AHL didn't hold a Calder Cup final for a couple of years during the pandemic stretch. So, and then it was last season, late in the year, the rumblings started coming out that Carolina and Chicago weren't seeing eye to eye. Chicago wants to have a winning team. They want to be able to kind of make their decisions, prioritize their objectives, which is obviously selling tickets and paying their bills. And Carolina obviously wants to develop players first and foremost. And you kind of had two very strong-willed front offices butt heads, so they split up. And this year they both have gone kind of off on their own. Carolina's had to scatter their players around to different teams, which is not ideal because your players are not prioritized when you're, let's say you're sending your players off to Bakersfield. Well, Bakersfield really has no obligation or loyalty to make, let's say, a goalie a priority there. So, playing time, systems-wise, it's harder to get your own, coaches there, obviously. And then you have a lot of other cases, players that, stayed in Europe who otherwise would have been over here. And so, you have guys playing the KHL, for example, right? Well, that, is a whole other, you can't get, it's just you're far removed geographically. It's just very difficult. And meanwhile, Chicago went independent, which is the first time in 30 years it's been an independent team, no affiliation in the AHL. So it's kind of been an interesting experiment because, just to sort of see, like, in such a development-oriented league, how would it, a team basically full of a bunch of old guys, how would they do? And it's been up and down. They've had their success, but right now they're kind of on that playoff bubble. So neither side has gotten, I think, quite what they had hoped for. And so that's kind of where they're at now. And there is, I think, some thought that maybe they'll get back together. It's kind of like the couple that breaks up and now maybe he wants to circle back and, hey, maybe, we didn't find anyone else out there. Maybe we should see if we can make this work again. And that's kind of where we're at right now. I've had, from what I've been told, I have reason to think this will probably drag into probably late spring at least before there'll be any sort of resolution. Because there really is the problem is there's really no good alternatives for either side. Most affiliations are pretty much spoken for at this point. So Carolina they don't own their own franchise, so they don't really have a place that they can put their players. But I do know that neither side, especially with Carolina, wants to go another year where you don't have a place to put your players and you're kind of just finding a spot for, a player here, another player goes there, and, there's just no cohesion.
Well, that's some really good insight. And there's a few questions that have come true, but I think we have to look at potentially what Tom Dundon may do, because that is an organization that sets kind of a budget, as we've seen in the last few years, and kind of sticks to it. They don't go above and beyond and are willing to kind of cut loose players, even at the NHL level, if they believe that their market value isn't what they assess as. Kyle's reaching out saying, hey, but we have some questions from the audience, Evan, before we get to your question, right?
That doesn't look like a question, Pawel. Hey, guys. That doesn't look like a question.
Zelstra, the Lost Trucker, is reaching out saying, who do you think would get the Hurricanes AHL team? And asking essentially, isn't the goal of an AHL and ECHL team for every team in the NHL to be in place? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is the goal, and that's what they had up until this year. They had finally, after all these years, gotten to the 32 at the AHL level. ECHL is a little bit behind, but they're even catching up now. They're adding 2 teams next year, so yeah, that's the goal, the ideal sort of that ladder. 32 at each level, and now of course if there's NHL expansion possibly, that's going to obviously kind of upset things again, but that's the goal, and that's why I think why there was a lot of consternation when this whole thing kind of blew up last season. That we finally kind of gotten it to this point. Been a ton of hard work. I mean, this has been the better part of 20 to 25 years getting this in place. Finally get it in place. You come out of the pandemic, you think everything's squared away, and then it all kind of went up in smoke. And I think part of it too is Carolina and Chicago are kind of very similar in a lot of ways. They know what they want. They like things a certain way. They both have their budgets, and it's kind of like two people that are like a little bit too much alike in that way, and that's where you get that friction, I think.
Interesting.
So hey, I just want to go back Pavel, give me a chance here, man. I need to get in on this. So I want to go back. So we had a guest on last season. I believe we had him on fairly early on. We had Robbie Schremp on. If you remember, Robbie was stuck in the same situation with Edmonton. Now, I thought that's kind of back when I started doing a lot of the writing back in the day. And one of the things is I was following, I was actually frustrated when he was stuck in Wilkes-Barre, thinking that, how was he getting – now he was very skilled, especially at the AHL level because, of course, the speed of the game, that was the thing that he mostly struggled with. Not skill, but the foot speed. But Robbie shared that it was an incredible experience, and he felt that he actually got all the playing time that during that period of time. Now, I know they didn't have as good a team back during that time either, but I actually found that interesting. So that's obviously where, when you're lining up, you must be trying to look for someone who will give your players some good time. Because I thought that was a real hindrance to Edmonton, but after talking to Robbie, he felt that was actually a real positive experience.
Yeah, and I think someone like him at the time, remember, he was a really highly regarded prospect. A lot of people thought he was going to be on the real fast track, and so a player like him, will probably be okay in that situation. It's more those guys, and where the HL really earns its keep, it's not getting those top end players. Like those guys will probably find a way more often than not. It's where what Tampa did for a long time was they got those borderline guys that can maybe go either way. They would get them over the hump, and they would get them into the NHL. That's where a real high-end AHL operation really earns its keep, is being able to kind of make the difference with those guys that are on the fence, right? Those guys that, in the right situation can make it, but in the wrong situation fall behind. And that's where it gets tricky, right? Where, if you're relying on sending your player off somewhere else, you lose control over how that player is used. You lose control over what system he's playing, who his coaches are, all that kind of thing. And, it's a real fine line for most players if they make it or not, right? People think there's a huge difference between guys at the, NHL level, in the sort of the bottom 6, or the bottom 4 in terms of D.
Right.
A lot of those times those guys are fairly interchangeable, and it really comes down to who's been able to be in the right development atmosphere and get, kind of over that hump, and, that's why you see Tampa would hit on those guys that were 4th round picks or undrafted. And, they signed, a Yanni Gord, for example, was probably one of the best examples. A guy that was literally, he was playing on a ECHL deal, and he signed a PTO in the AHL and ends up now he's, playing in Seattle on a 6-year NHL deal, and kind
almost gave up too with him and his wife. He talked about it, didn't know if that was going to be a career, and here he is, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah, or a Verhage or a Marchessault, guys like that, guys that I think in a different situation could have easily fallen by the wayside. But Tampa has a great development setup, and they've had it for years, where they they're really able to get those players over humps. So that's the ideal model you want to try to get to. And if you don't have that for your own players, it can just be really hard, to kind of get those guys, those borderline guys through to the NHL.
Now, this is going to be kind of a 3-parter question, but you're watching a lot of these guys, and I'm sure that Evan's going to want to ask about some prospects that are potentially we should keep an eye out for. But in your eye, who do you think, or is there a difference in terms of development when it comes to being a forward, being a defenseman, or even being a goalie? With the understanding of ice time is kind of the key thing, but is there anything beyond that you see that they need a bit more or benefit more from when they're playing on those respective clubs? Or is it just kind of you're coming in, you're getting seasoned, you're developing the system that's coming into the NHL for that franchise to kind of just plug in when you're needed for an injury?
Yeah, I think, as a general rule, the systems that are the, development systems that work the best tend to be where they're trying to get players to fit certain roles at the NHL level, right? And sometimes the guys that put up the huge numbers in the HL aren't the guys that make it, because you don't need someone to come up there and play first line with Connor McDavid, You're not looking for that. You're looking for a guy that can come in on third and fourth line and kill penalties, or a guy that can eat.
Tyler Benson
types who can come in, eat 12, 14 minutes a night, or a defenseman that can come in, just be a excellent, third pairing guy, or even a second pairing guy. You're not looking for somebody to come in there and play 25 minutes a night on the blue line. So those systems that kind of train those guys to fit certain roles, and it tends to go a lot more smoothly than, okay, well, let's just, have, the best guys, guys that put up 30 goals in the AHL. Well, they get calls. Those guys, a lot of times, like, then they get stuck on the fourth line. Well, they never played fourth line. And, now that you're coming in, you're saying, okay, we need to play fourth line. You're going to play 6 minutes. You're used to playing 22 minutes. You're playing a completely different role at a higher level. And, then we kind of wonder, well, why does this guy not make it? Well, because, he's just been completely cast in a different situation than anything he's ever played before. So the NHL obviously is, it's enough of a jump as it is, where without trying to like take on a whole different role. So they think that, whether you're talking defensemen, forwards, whatever the case may be, goalies are kind of their own thing, right? Like, in the end, you kind of either stop the puck or you don't. But for defensemen and goalies, or forwards especially, I think that role and finding the right fit is huge for the vast majority of young prospects.
Okay, so I have 2-part questions, and we might have a couple questions from anyone in the comment section. Now, this is a 2-part, so I'll ask you the front part. Stankoven just got up. He's looking incredible. He was sitting at the top, but of course, I mean, Dallas is just packed because they also got Maverick Bourque. Now, in 2020, I had him ranked 15th going in. I like Bourque. I like what I'm seeing. Are you able to give us a little update on anything that you followed on? Because there's not a lot in the AHL that comes out. Not a lot of people do writing along those lines, unless you actually know that specific group, right, around that. So maybe give us a little update of what you can on Bourque, and then also touch in on Coachella Valley, the farm team in the AHL for Seattle, if you could.
Yeah, well, I actually spoke to Dan Bosmo just yesterday. I try to check in with coaches. I try to do, do a group each week, and then kind of like, circle back, so I hit them, 3, 4, 5 times a year. So, but, to start with Bourque, Bourque is coming along nicely. Like, he's second year pro. Obviously he's a first round pick, leading the league in scoring. So that's not so much a surprise that he can put the puck in it. He obviously has that history, and what I like about him is he shoots the puck. Like, he has 193 shots in 56 games.
Oh wow!
Like I love that confidence with a young player, right? Like, and I think he's also getting a good test now. Like, now he's the guy with Texas, right? Like, Stankoven's up and very well maybe up to stay, and that means that much more attention's on Bourque now, both from opponents, but also just internally with that team, where he's being asked to do even more than he already has. So I spoke with Bourque earlier this year, and as with so many players, I mean, I sometimes feel like like it's a broken record with them, but we know they can. We know what they can do offensively with the puck. What's going to get them in the NHL and help them stay there long term is obviously what they do without the puck. It's what you do in the neutral zone, what you do in your own zone. That playing that 3-zone, 200-foot type game. You hear coaches, over and over and over and over till they're blue in the face say it. And, it's true though. I mean, like, very few players, and certainly probably almost nobody at this level has that kind of like lights out skill that you're going to be able to, like, okay, well, we can bring you up. You can't play a lick of the game away from the puck, but hey, you can put the puck in it. Like, even the best players in the NHL level have to have that defensive responsibility. So that's exactly. For so many players, that's really what will keep them in or out of the NHL, is that ability to really master that play away from the puck. And it's hard for young players because, what's gotten them to this point has been their ability to put the puck in the net, and it's kind of what they do, and it's a lot more fun than and then playing the other side of the puck. And so now you have a coach just sitting there, week after week at practice, like, okay, like really trying to drive the point home. And, the players that eventually get that message, or that much sooner they're going to be up in the NHL. The ones that don't are the ones that tend to be down here in the AHL when they're 30 years old talking to me. So that's the catch with that.
That is a privilege.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're thrilled. And as far as Coachella, they're an interesting group. Like they went to the Game 7 of the finals last year, lost in overtime. It was a fantastic series.
To the Hershey Bears, right? If I recall, or
the Hershey Bears, yeah. And so you had Shane Wright there going through that experience. Riker Evans, who's now pretty much a full-time NHLer at this point, I think. Joey DeCord was just lights out for them. But it's an interesting group because you only have a couple draft classes still in there. So you're just now starting to cycle some prospects in there. So this year they're kind of a team in transition. I mean, they're obviously still playing quite well performance-wise, but now you're starting to cycle some younger players in. That kind of that first real wave of draft picks is coming in. It's also a group now that went through a long playoff run. They played 26 games last year in the playoffs, over 2 months. Went to win as close as you can without winning the cup. Then they have to come back and try to climb that hill all over again. So that was tough for I talked to Bilesman, he said it took them about a good solid 2 months or so to kind of get out of that funk, of losing that final, coming back. Now, you've been all those high intensity, high pressure games. Now it's October, November, you're playing a Wednesday night game and, it's game 7 of the season, just getting that intensity back up and getting that up to kind of a real high level took some time. But, Bilesman, he's obviously one of Jack Adams, his Olympic coach. He's a real interesting guy to talk to at this level because, he has that real, extensive NHL resume. But he also, now is sort of really transitioned to the AHL teaching mode. So it's an interesting kind of dynamic with them. And their team that's, they're trying to win. There's a real high priority there from Seattle to put a winning product on the ice there in Coachella. And so, you have this mix and you have a fourth overall pick like Shane Wright in there to kind of keep things interesting. You have some free agent young prospects. So it's kind of a little bit of everything. And you have, good heart, real solid, one of the best veteran cores in the league, which is huge at this level. You need your veterans. You see the teams that struggle at this level are the ones that don't have the veterans. Those are the guys that, when the young kids play like young kids and are inconsistent and have a good game one night, bad game the next, it's those older players that I think people overlook, but they're the ones that really kind of keep everything on the rails and keep things going.
That's pretty interesting. So now I know people love debates and, you've answered a few questions that people were asking about, including Shane Wright and kind of what's going on. And Lost Truck is also talking about cerebral type players playing best 2A games. I guess the thing to get people all excited and talking is, what do you think is a better league for development? Is it the AHL or is it the KHL or is it some other European league potentially, or even the NCAA? College, right? Is there some kind of thing? I know Evan and I discussed this a few seasons back, kind of looking at the merits, but your thoughts on more so the KHL, given what talent comes out of there and how big of a league that is over there in Russia.
Yeah, obviously talent-wise, KHL has a ton of talent. I will say, a lot of AHLers that go over there tend to do really well. So, the notion that it's a vastly better league, I don't really agree with that.
We're trying to get people hyped up and angry and yelling at us,
I think if you're strictly talking about getting players ready to play in the NHL, the AHL is where you need to be. You're playing a North American style game. You're going to be playing the same system as your parent club, almost down to a T. You see a few wrinkles just based on personnel, but for the most part, 95% of what you're playing, systems wise at the AHL levels. What you'll be playing up top, and it's just you're playing first round picks, young players. It's intensity, it's a pro intense, real intense style schedule. You get your 3 and 4s, you still get some 3 and 3s, then you have that grind, that 72 game grind, and then that's before you even get to the playoffs. So it's the closest thing I think you can get to the NHL without being the NHL itself. So that's kind of where I sit on that topic.
Awesome. And Lost Trucker's talking about how Abbotsford is doing poorly this year due to the fact that Vancouver continues to pull players up and sending them down. Too much of a shuffle. Any quick thoughts on the Abbotsfield Canucks?
Yeah, they're off to a really good start. They've definitely slowed down the latter, kind of the middle third of the season, which happens. Abbotsford, I mean, they have a tough schedule travel-wise too. I mean, that's the other thing. Like when they were in Utica, like pretty much half your games were within an hour or two. So you're back home by midnight on the bus. Now Abbotsford, and I know that from being with Manitoba, like you're looking at like 7 to 10 day road trips, usually at a minimum, usually 6 games in like 12 nights. So it's a different dynamic in that sense. Abbotsford's kind of the same situation. So, and then, if you're on a 6-game road trip and you happen to have some call-ups at that point, like you can pile up losses pretty quick. So, they have certainly had their fair share of call-ups and send-downs, and that's a challenge, no question. I mean, that's the AHL, right? Like coaches will tell you that over and over. I mean, you play who you have that night. I mean, I've talked to coaches at 5 o'clock. They don't know who's necessarily going to be in their lineup at 7 o'clock.
Oh man!
Hey, is so and so going to be able to get in from on their flight? Get from the airport to the rink and be there in time and all that. So it's a lot of really like thinking on your feet for coaches. And obviously, that extends down to players as well. Like, hey, you may not know who's going to be on your line that night at 5 o'clock. So, I think that's a challenge for a team like Abbotsford, where you do have those players going up and down all the time.
And that makes me actually wonder if that could be a reason for the Oilers actually keeping the team in Bakersfield because of all the teams down there, so that they don't have that trip for the AHL team and they can just focus. And maybe if they had a lot higher end prospects right now and they were in a rebuilding, it might have a different feel. But I mean that area, I didn't actually know. When you were talking about earlier that they put money into the arena, they even the parent club, then right, with it. So that's actually quite interesting.
Yeah, a fair amount they put in, and sort of like the back end stuff, like the training area, dressing room, that kind of thing. Like I think they put in lighting. I want to say a scoreboard as well, like sort of some of the more visible public stuff. But like I think you're right though. Like just it is a little bit easier to sort of avoid that temptation of bringing guys up and down. Because I mean it's a long trip from Bakersfield to Edmonton, right? Like 2 hours from LAX, right, just to get to LA and get through that, and then it's a long flight, and then it's customs and it's all that. Like so, like if you're going to call a player up, sure it's worth it, right?
And you got an hour just to get to the airport.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, you're looking at the better part of you're probably looking at an 8 to 10, 12 hours sometimes, depending on your connections, travel day, where you're going from. So yeah, you want to make those call-ups count. Like you don't want to get in a situation where you're just pulling guys back and forth. I mean, I remember when San Jose was in Worcester, Massachusetts, and they would have to call like Logan Couture. Like, I mean, that year he was there, I swear, like he would go back and forth constantly because there was cap issues. And, that meant like he was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get a flight out of Boston at like 6 a.m. to get to San Jose, by like 10 a.m. for morning skate or practice. And then coming back the next day, back to the East, losing 3 hours. And, it's just not conducive for development. That was what spurred a lot of those Western Conference teams to put their affiliates a lot closer to home. I mean, there's trade-offs, right? Like when you're Abbotsford, it's really convenient. We're 45 minutes down the highway. GM, can shoot down there, no problem. The Sedins go down to Abbotsford, like with some of the players. So, you have that benefit, but there is also sort of that trade-off as well.
Sweet.
That was very fascinating. And Lost Trucker talks about how there's no close parking there for trucks in Bakersfield. Cry, cry, cry. So clearly she's not a happy fan. I was going to say that I wonder if that scoreboard was invested by Jack Campbell while he's finding his game to invest back into the building that he's able to play in, right? And we wish him all the best because I know he's probably living it up and buying the dinners for all the teammates he's got down there with that big.
Well, I was talking to Colin Chalk about that. That's a tricky part of being a coach at that level, right? Like, you have a player coming down, like, you have to help him build his game back up, right? Like, and like he comes down and like, that we all saw that first month or so of the season for Campbell, that was rough. And a guy comes down there, like, and he comes in, like, you're coming in kind of a team that, they're doing their own thing, and you're kind of the new guy on the block, and you're trying to find your game. So there's a lot of moving parts there. Like, like coaches at this level, like, like in a lot of ways it's harder than coaching the NHL, because the NHL is a lot more of a kind of like stable roster. It's just more things run more smoothly. Whereas like down at the AHL level, it's just more chaotic. You got guys coming, going, different stages of their career, different objectives, different agendas. The guys are looking, strictly for their own stats. They want to get a contract over in Europe. So, there's a lot of like, you're trying to pull 25 guys into kind of like, one cohesive group. Guys like Colin Chalk are certainly earning their money doing that.
Sweet.
Well, that's been fun. So we're going to finish up here because we don't want to take too much of your time. We've already gone a little bit over, so we appreciate you staying behind. We have quite a few viewers tuning in, so thanks, guys, for tuning in. Remember, you can ask any questions for Patrick, but we'll finish off with final two questions, and I'll let Evan go first. Go ahead, Evan.
If anyone's watching in the AHL right now, who would you say would be the player if you want to be searching, going on Google, or checking out a player that's developing down there that is getting a little bit of news?
Yeah, well, it was Stankoven.
Stankoven.
I don't think we're going to see him anytime soon again. I would say Joel Blomqvist at Wilkes-Barre Stratton, goalie, good young prospect, came over this year. Has an okay team in front of him, but has had an excellent season, 920 save percentage. Yaroslav Askarov in Milwaukee, first round pick, 11th overall. And goalies at this level can be messy sometimes, like in terms of their development. He's been fantastic. Nashville just seems to like one after another find goalies, right? Like, you had Pecorine way back when, then you had Jussi Saros. That's a well-oiled machine there with their goalie development. So those would be two guys I think like you would definitely want to keep an eye out for sure.
Okay. So you guys keep an eye out for those. Now, we also like to talk NHL, and I know you're a big fan of NHL. Any thoughts so far on the season, the trade deadline, highlights so far, or anything that's really like caught your eye, or a team that you're kind of been following and you're like, oh, this is impressive? Potential Stanley Cup final prediction of teams?
Yeah, well, I think Philly's been a fun story, right? Like that was a team, they were just bad last year. They were awful, and like you see like the turnaround they've had with Tortorella, and like it's kind of this mad scientist where like like he just finds a way, right? Like and like like it's been impressive like how he's turned that team around. I mean, a lot of the same personnel. It's a team on paper that's not particularly anything special, and yet they're
healthy. They're healthy. That's the big thing. You have Konechny and Sanheim healthy, and I think Atkinson as well, because I'm a Philly fan.
There they are. They're third in the Metropolitan Division, so that's been a kind of a fun story seeing them really find their way. And like I think Edmonton, obviously, your neck of the woods has been fun. Like I mean, that awful start, and then they rattle off 16 in a row, and all in the same season. Like I mean, just kind of like what is going on, right? Like, like you're trying to make
Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, any sense of it. Like Chris Knobloch coming in mid-November and like, coming in like from Hartford in the AHL and going really unusual move to kind of switch franchises like that midstream and comes in and has a big
and even Chris Drury and the New York Rangers organization for allowing that transition to happen. Oftentimes you can't speak with coaches, head coaches, especially in the league, but to allow it and then to hire, there must have been some finessing there. I want to be
interesting fact. So interesting fact, guys, because we're talking about Knobloch. So Dallas Aikens, he had 113 games to get his 36 wins. Knobloch started in November and has his 36 wins.
Wow.
Yeah,
I actually saw a Knobloch today downtown when I was downtown at work. So I didn't want to bug him, but he was grabbing coffee. Should have
Yeah.
asked him to come on.
A real kind of low key personality. Like, he's like very sort of like, doesn't show a lot of like, of his cards, but he's done a heck of a job there. So that's been a really interesting story. I think seeing that turnaround, just like, as a team obviously that came in with a lot of potential. So, maybe in some ways they're where we expected them to be at the start of the year, but maybe not where we expected it to be, once November rolled around and we had seen that start. So that's been kind of a fun story. As far as predictions,
Who's your heart winner right now?
I don't really have a heart thing going right now, but I think the Rangers would be a fun story. I think either Rangers versus Edmonton or Vancouver would be fun. I mean, Rangers Canucks would be fun, kind of a 30-year anniversary of '94. That, was such a fantastic series. And then obviously Rangers Oilers would be fun too. I think just, the storylines there. You'd have Knobloch coming back against the parent club of the AHL team that he left earlier in the year. So, coaching against some of the players that he developed in Hartford. So I think that would be a lot of fun in terms of storylines. And then obviously anytime you get a marquee iconic franchise like the Oilers against an original six, like the Rangers, I think that's always got a lot of potential for some real good storylines there.
There would definitely be a questionable hit from either side, whether it's Kane or Trouba. That's all I would say.
I think, yeah. Well, then, like in, Jets wise, like, yeah, you'd have that Kane Trouba, two former Jets first rounders. And Kane was an Atlanta first rounder, but yeah, guys that came up and then went elsewhere and have found success in other places. So I think that would be a fun subplot as well.
Awesome. That's been great. Any last thoughts, Evan?
No. I just thanks so much, Patrick, for taking some time. By the way, I think you're familiar. You know Jim Tooth, right? Or Toth?
Jim Tooth? Yeah. Winnipeg, yeah.
Yeah. So he'll be on after Winnipeg's finished on our show at the end of the season. So I'll make sure to say hi for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're trying to negotiate him on, and I told him, I said, well, we got Patrick in that time slot, so you're going to have to wait till playoffs, and now he won't commit to me, I'm like, just because Winnipeg's playing doesn't mean you can't still come on, Well,
I mean, Tother's one of the best guys in the business, best hair in the business for sure. He'll be the first one to tell you that as well. But yeah, no, he's been around the Jets, really around the Moose, even back to their Vancouver affiliate days, going back 20 years probably at this point. So yeah, he's a lot of fun, great talker. You'll really enjoy him for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
One of the players to watch for that is Brad Lambert. That
Yes.
kid could potentially a stud. He was a steal at 32 or 31 or something.
30th, yeah.
30, yeah, sorry, somewhere up there. So keep an eye out for him because I've liked his game.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
No,
What's that?
Go ahead, Evan.
No, I was just saying, really appreciate you coming on. So yeah, Pawel was just going to ask you, where can people find you outside of what we've already listed?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at P Williams AHL. Real kind of straightforward handle there, and my work is on the AHL.com 4 or 5 times a week. NHL.com as well. Do a notebook for them. So yeah, I'm kind of everywhere. I'm on Twitter every day. I think that's a lot of us are, and yeah, it's never slows down. That's for sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much for
We
joining us.
appreciate it. We hope to have you back, and good luck the rest of the way in the season, both AHL and NHL and whatever else you're doing, and all the best in life. We hope to have you back on the show, hopefully in the near future.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Take care.
Keep your stick
Bye.
on the ice. Cool. Hey, let me give you an interesting fact. So I got a listing of goalies because he was covering in the AHL. Right now, Portillo is at 925 save percentage. Wolf is at 923. Edmonton's Rodrigue is number 3 at 918. This is for 23 and under goalies. And then you go to Blomqvist, which he was talking about in Wilkes-Barre at 919. and Askarov, which you talked about, at 9:17, and then Sebastian Cossa and the Detroit Red Wings at 9:10. I mean, these are the 20.
He's been hitting me.
But it's been interesting. You got some good goalies down there developing, like he was saying. They just need to stop the puck. So I would tell people
I want to
that
say Costa's going to have a hard time breaking into the league. I've watched him play for the Oil Kings, and I think he's one of those players that I like him, but I don't know if he's going to be a full-time NHL starter.
I actually don't. I actually think it's systems. You know what? He could be a lot what you found with Brossoit, right? Brossoit came in and he had a little bit of struggle early on. Yeah. And a lot of people thought Brossoit was not going to be a solid backup. I mean, last year he started in the playoffs, right? And now, and they brought him back to Winnipeg. He was so good that they, because they were letting him go thinking, okay, this isn't going to be worth it. And now they're like, now we got a solid backup that can even start in the playoffs for us. So, all right, man, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Awesome. Thank you. So now we've got Around the Rink. Around the Rink is brought to you by Calcasta Battlers, right? Is that what I'm saying? I'm saying it correctly?
Calcasta Battlers, man.
Great hockey in the state of Michigan, the state of hockey. Go check it out if it's in your neighborhood. They've got some great players, great content, and amazing memorabilia. Go check them out, the Calcasta Battlers.
Hey, so I was actually thinking, I don't know why we haven't done this. If you guys want to check them out, what we're going to do is we're going to take a link because they are posting their YouTube channel live streams. So I'm going to check because they're just about wrapped up, I believe. I got to check in with Andrew Dibble. We had planned to have him on. He is the owner of the team. They're in their inaugural season in a 4th year of the league in the Michigan Independence Hockey League. And they are one of our sponsors out there. So definitely too bad it's not a longer season. They're a semi-pro league, but I was thinking, you know what? Let's get their YouTube channel connected to you guys so we can throw it up on our Facebook page. Yeah. And we know we got a huge following over on the Facebook. And by the way, I just want to give a shout out to a lot of you guys in Ontario, Canada. So last week, you guys I don't know what, you went ballistic and you had a bunch of friends that were at a party and you guys just jumped on this show. We have not had a huge following out of Ontario. In fact, many other provinces, and you guys just kind of you just overtook Alberta and British Columbia and Saskatchewan and Manitoba. You took them all on, which I'm sure you guys should be proud of. So, and I'd like to say the state of California and then the state of New York, you guys were awesome last week. You kind of help your U.S. buddies on our numbers. So we just want to say thank you. And remember, every Wednesday night, 7 p.m., right here on Mountain Standard Time. So if you're in the East, that's 9. If you're in Central, that's 8. If you're in the Pacific, that's 6. That you can be able to join us. And just remember, every Wednesday night, we have our live show from 7 to 8. Most often we have guests. There's occasionally sometimes that we don't have a guest on. So tonight was Patrick Williams following the beat around the AHL for the last 10 years, also with some NHL.com and previously of the Jets.com. So, yeah, some great stuff. And most of my Around the Rink, I was going to cover the goalies, but I want to give a hats off. After listening to Patrick, I'm going to be following Maverick Bourque. I want to see how he finishes without Stankoven and see what happens with that team, even in the playoffs. I think that whatever we can do to kind of keep you guys highlighted as their season goes on. One of the things we try to do is not just give you guys NHL. And tonight, we kept you busy with a lot of AHL talk. So can I do this before we go over the last couple minutes? I just want to talk about a prospect. So if we can go to my Revs Top 15, give me 2 minutes. That's all I need.
You got it.
He's got to go over and check out on our Facebook page. If you haven't yet, go over, follow. I posted. So you guys have been hearing us talk about around 2016 NHL draft prospect, #1 consensus pick already. You're saying, oh, this is young. I've been talking about him for 2 years already when he was only 13 years old. Now I'm going to give you a new name to look out for. We put it on our Facebook page. And by the way, on there, we have stuff every day. We're posting, we're sharing, we're taking from different places. So you can get kind of your content on our Facebook page and updates around everything, including, of course, our live streams there, or you can go to our website at twoguysinhockeytalk.com. But his name is Prob Bothell. He is 14 years old. Okay, guys. He had 83 goals, 119 points in 32 games playing for the U15 AAA Winnipeg Thrashers team. Remember, it's a U15. He was 13, turned 14 in the same year. Let me give you some really cool details about this. Previous year, when he was 12 going on 13 in the U15, he still got 73 points with 46 goals and in 34 games. And right now, the interesting part around this is this player already this year moved up to U17 at 14 years old, played in 3 games. He got himself, okay, you ready? 8 points on the U17 team, went up and he played a few more games. He played 5 games for the U18. Remember, he's 14 years old. He's already got a couple points in it. And then he went to the playoffs. He had 4 points in the 4 games for the playoff. And as the U18, he had 3 points in his 5 games. This guy is an amazing prospect. You got to follow him, Prob Bothell. And I'm telling you, he's going to at least be a top 13 pick. Ready? In Rev's top 15 for 2027. Mike
Wow,
Jones.
that's quite a long time. Yeah, that's very impressive. Is there anyone else we should be keeping an eye on beyond that?
Not right now. We I know we need about 5 minutes to talk a little NHL talk, probably a couple things that you want to hit on before we call it a wrap.
There's a few, but I did want to bring up one thing. So I was doing a little digging and I got this sent to me. And we love the PWHL, and this isn't directly associated with it, but I just want to talk about the Sports Bra Bar. It's a bar in the States created by Jenny Nguyen, who presents and promotes all types of women's sports for a bar. So you know how you have a bar for men, you're always playing stuff. This is directly designed to only play female or women's sports to showcase it for people. So if you are in that area, and that's the Portland area, which I may be down there this spring, go check out the Sports Bra Bar. We're not getting any kind of incentive here. We're not being sponsored here. We would love to have the owner on here just to talk about this, but this is a pretty cool idea because it's the WNBA. It could be tennis. It could be a variety of other sports. It could be golf. But you know what? I like it. And if you're in that area, go check it out. That was my one thing around the rink because I hope they're playing some PWHL games. I got a chance to watch the Ottawa-Montreal game on TV over the weekend. That was a real thriller. It's been fun. I think playoffs are coming up here soon for them, so that should be good. But let's finish off kind of quickly talking about, the NHL. There's been quite a bit going on. I want to get into quickly the John Tortorella suspension and what he did. Your thoughts on what happened?
Why don't we cover 2 things and then call it a wrap? Let's cover the torts and let's cover Rempe. So Matt Rempe and getting his suspension.
Rempe. Okay. And didn't Pawel go to Phoenix? I will be going to Phoenix in April. I will be there on April 17th for the hockey game.
April 3rd, right?
And Law Strucker is asking, what team is Bork playing on? Is that the Bork that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah. That is the Texas Stars. That's the farm team of the Dallas Stars. So So he is the next one to be called up. So I see Key. Yes, I was on. So you guys didn't know, I was on last night. I thought, and Jake, if you're listening to this, I thought you said come on for 15 minutes, 1-5, but I guess you said 50-5-0. I'm glad that you're good at carrying a show and had a lot of cool questions to make that fun. So I went on the Snake Sports Show. You guys got to check it out. I joked. I said I thought we had one of the best intros. Jamie Basco said in all of our podcasts. Literally, I mean, we got a great music that comes on and we work with. But the Snake Sports Show with Jake Silva is really, really good and really, really fun. He's got some great intro. I felt like a wrestling star, like Jamie said when he came to our show. So it was fabulous. But yeah, so follow the playoffs. I am actually expecting Maverick Bork. If the team gets eliminated for their farm team, I expect that he could get a chance to at least sit up there or get a quick call up. He'd be a great guy to throw in on that 3rd, 4th line and do a fill, and he can score and he can play the 2-way like Patrick Williams said. So
All right, let's get into the Rempe thing, and then we'll get into torts. Kind of finish off the show with a bang.
What's your
Rempe,
thoughts?
on Rempe's hit? It was a dirty elbow, and he deserved 4 games.
Okay.
I think it was very
wow.
unnecessary, and I thought he should have fought Curtis McDermott. I wasn't a fan of the fact that the refs got in the way. I know he's a big guy, so you can have that excuse, but he's been doing this for a bit. You can definitely tell that he's
he has been elbowing people for a bit, though.
And I think he's got more penalty minutes than he actually has time on ice. So this is kind of the thing, right? Great guy. He was picked up for the Rangers for a reason. He's a great young kid. He has a bright future. He fought Ryan Reeves. That was fun. But I think at a certain point, you got to play the game. I think he's only got 2 or 3 points on the season so far, a goal and assist, or a goal and 2 assists.
He's only got 6 games.
Yeah, but I think it's like 8. But I think at this point he's got what's it called? He's really got to dial it back just a bit because there's a time and place for it. I like it. I think he's being the talk of the town, especially in the Rangers sphere. It's why the New Jersey Devils picked up Curtis McDermott, right? I mean, there was no other rationale for it. So I like to see it, but I think you got to spread it out a bit and build that rivalry up. So your thoughts?
Okay. So a couple things. I've actually talked to 2 former NHLers on this one. And so interesting take that they gave me from a perspective, because one thing that I noticed, because I did catch some of that game. So now earlier in that game, Curtis McDermott was trying to find a fight all game because the guy only plays 3-4 minutes a night. He doesn't even get as much as Rempe. And he kept, and Rempe was stupid to go take on that challenge right now. He shouldn't just do it because the guy asked him. So he kept hacking and everywhere constantly, and he was doing dirty stuff. He should have got called on it. They didn't call him on it. Now, so that part of it to say that, he was going for a hit. Now, I am so tired. I could start a rant on this, but I'm tired of the big boys when they come to finish a check, because everything gets slowed down in super slow motion. And so he was coming in to finish a check. If you watch, so the player leans back and pulls away, and last second he does stretch his elbow out. Does he deserve to get a suspension? Does he deserve to be fined? Yes, because he did stretch out. Remember, though, 1/100th of a second. The player didn't want to be hit, so they pulled themselves away, and then the elbow got him up, and that's where you get it. But it was it's a spur of a thing. You're trying to finish. 4 games was way too much. He hasn't elbowed anybody. He doesn't have a history behind that. I heard an interview with Knobloch, even on talking about him, because he played for him in Hartford. He is a good player. He has the ability to play 12 minutes a game. I have a different perspective. He deserved to get it. It was too much on this suspension, in my opinion. And I do not think it's as dirty as people think. I think that it was needed, but it was not the same. And I don't think what he's doing is bad at all. I love it.
Agree to disagree. I'm not saying what he's doing is bad at all. My issue is that it was an elbow. He got 4. He's already been kicked out. I think he's gotten 1 game misconduct in his time in the NHL. And I think the fact that he went for the elbow, you should be in control. Just like a stick.
Go for the elbow. It was 1/100th of a second.
He just said he lifted at the last minute. He knows
in the 1/100th of a second, his elbow goes up as a reaction. Because the guy was back. He didn't know what he's doing in 1-1. Okay,
so are you calling Matt Rempe stupid? Matt Rempe, are you listening?
Watch this. Watch this, Pawel. You say how you're perfect at naming names. You called them Abbotsfield, the Canucks, Abbotsfield earlier tonight. So you know what you're doing. Why are you making a mistake? Because it's 1/100th of a second when you're in the.
I'm not on the ice.
Yeah. Obviously, you don't know how to play on the ice. If you actually played on the ice, you'd realize in 1/100th of a second, you're going to make a mistake.
Agree to disagree. Okay. You guys can let us know your thoughts.
Let's go to Torts, man. Let's go to Torts. Yeah.
All right. So Torts gets suspended. Lost Trucker's talking about how he is auditioning for the Oscars. I guess there was a younger ref on the ice. Made kind of some questionable calls. Philly was already down. I think it was like 3 or 4-0. Then, he started berating them. Whatever was said was said. Wes McCauley came in. So we all know Wes McCauley, veteran of the game, has been around for a very long time, kind of is one of the more elite, whether you agree or disagree, referees in the game. People know him. Oftentimes he refs Stanley Cup finals, comes in, penalizes Torts, tells him to get out. Torts doesn't want to leave, stays on the bench for a bit, continues to berate Wes McCauley and the officials. Took him a bit. Then he finally left. And essentially, after that, the owner of the Flyers organization said he'd come out and pay any fine. He gets a fine and 2 games. Here we are now with him being suspended. I think this is a bad look for the NHL. I don't like it. I think it's stupid. I think the refs' feelings got hurt. I think, you have to explain what happened, what was said, because if it's just a few, swear words that were said, and people make mistakes. I get it. They have a hard job. But to be like, what's going on? Rather than come over and talk to him and figure it out, and Torts has been around for a while. And I'm pretty sure he's the only other coach that I know was last suspended, right? So we've seen coaches kicked out and fined, Sheldon Keefe, John Granato, Jay Woodcroft was kicked out this year, and they didn't really go into it as to what happened. But at the end of the day, I think this took the heat off of the Philadelphia Flyers, who had a very abysmal game. They lost 7-0 to Tampa Bay, so that was good, and they really need to turn it around. But I really think the refs, this does not look good on the refs or the NHL, who's protecting them. But your thoughts?
Yeah, so this one's interesting to me. So I actually heard the story. So when now a former, he's actually off the Daily Face-Off. If you go follow on the Daily Face-Off with Staravelli. One of the guys that works with him, I'm not going to throw out names right now, but if you go follow some of his stuff, they'll love you to go check them out. But he talked about how he happened to be there the day after. And so he was with Danny Briere at their house. They were celebrating. And so they were having a party for one of the kids for a birthday party. And then the phone call came in talking about the suspension, saying, and it caught, and they go, you won't believe this. And so he got the news. So supposedly there was no cussing actually at Wes McCauley at all. He was angry because he was trying to get them to explain what was going on, and they wouldn't let him. And he felt it was unjust that they were telling him to leave, because it was a really simple thing. He wasn't berating. He never called out anybody. He wasn't.
Like you said, I'm down effing leaving.
No. So you are going way past what I'm saying, Pavel. He did not do anything until he was told to leave. So but there was no reason for McCauley to tell him to leave, is what he said. No cussing. There was no nothing. So he felt he had the right to be there, and he should not have been expelled. And it was the control that Wes McCauley was calling for. And that's why ownership and everyone said, no, we're standing behind Torts. Frankly, he didn't leave. I think they need to make an example. It should have been 1 game and maybe a $15,000 fine, but 50 in 4 games, I think is ridiculous. I totally am.
Where's the precedent? So when have we seen this before?
4 games.
Why are we?
It's because they don't like Torts. They don't like Torts. Edmund wants to make fun of it. I think it's ridiculous.
Fine, but where's
you know what, Rocky, man?
You think
Rocky
with the technology we have today, you think that Torts can't sit behind the bench or behind the glass there and the seats, or up top and coach from what's it called? From the microphone?
I don't know if they're actually allowed. I think there are some rules behind that. But anyway, you know what?
What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Suspend him for more games?
Yeah, but there's no sense for them to kind of go further. You know what? Torts is taking the pressure off.
This is a bad look for the NHL. This is a bad look for refereeing, and I think they shit the bed. I really do, because look, I'm sorry. Like, your feelings are hurt, and now you're telling me that there's no swearing. And again, I didn't hear that. Like, then that's ridiculous. And again, I know that there was the Jay Woodcroft situation, but what is being said? And like, I know players will say things, sure, and you could send a player out, but like, are you telling me that if a coach or an assistant coach wants an answer to something, you can't go over and just explain it and calm things down? Like, I don't know. I think this is.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling. I was playing in the league, and not the league, not the NHL. Let's get that right. We're talking City League. So anyway, I was playing in Div 2, And we were in the last game of the season. We were trying to get that first place. Had we won, and I was frustrated. It was a tie game. It was 2-2, and we had a minute left in the game. I knew it had a good chance of going into overtime, which was going to be basically a shootout because we didn't play the extra minutes. And literally the ref, something happened. He pushed me. And so I pushed him back just to get him out of my crease. And the guy just fell like a swan. And I went to explain to the ref to ask him, and he booted me out of the game. He booted me. We literally, and they gave us 15 minutes to get the other guy to put my goalie equipment on. Like, it was ridiculous, the power trip that these guys go on. You said it's going to give them a bad name. It's bad for the game. Refereeing, we know, has been a joke. We know Bettman and the NHL rules has been a joke for a long time. So I don't know if it can get worse, Pavel. All I know is it gives great entertainment for you.
And the problem is with social media, it's only going to get worse. It's only. Yeah. And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. You want gambling in the game. You are making a decisive impact by changing the outcome of the game with how a coach is coaching. Because then you have an assistant coach. And I get it. Like, there's a plan and whatever. And I get the game is out of reach for the Philadelphia Flyers. But what if that's a 3-2 game and Torts wants to take a timeout and make a call himself? Like, you understand, like, there's things and repercussions that come into this decision. And I know it's a bit of a rant for us. I just think it's a bad black mark on the NHL. And I can't believe that they suspended Torts 2 games for what? Like, where's the precedent?
2 games for him, 4 games for him. Sorry. Yeah.
Like, we can discuss players like Morgan Riley slashing or cross-checking somebody in the neck versus Austin Matthews. And was it 1? Was it 3? Was it 5? What is that? Fair. There is some credence and a history. When's the last time you saw a coach gets kicked out and then suspended for what? For apparently berating, allegedly not berating, but also, getting some clarification. I look at it as a bit of a cop-out. But you guys let us know. We've gone way over time, which is why we're known as Two Guys in Overtime. Remember, we are here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We will be talking with more guests coming up. We've got a few more planned in the next coming weeks. So remember to tune in every Wednesday on our YouTube page. Give us a follow. Give us a like. We appreciate it. We love having you guys here and spending your evening with us. Evan, before we wrap up and before we thank Penny Billionaires for a great rockin' song to be our headliner for our opening show, is there any final thoughts you have?
It was great having Patrick Williams on again. Thanks to him for joining in. He didn't have to take this time. He was excellent. He booked with us like 3 months ago. So thank you to Patrick for doing that. Really looking forward, guys. Join us next week. We have Michael Devellano going to be joining us. He is a scout for the WHL Albert Silvertips and also for a amateur scout for the Detroit Red Wings. So we have him on next week. I am going to see if we can also get him as some pre-recording that we can have this same guy, Michael Delvillano, to be able to give us some quick feeds even for at the live draft. So I think that we're going to get some now looks into what's Detroit looking into, what are they seeing, and what's happening around Everett for their team in the WHL. So we got people from all around, man. It's exciting. And I'm telling you, the reason we get these people is because you are followers. So thank you for subscribing on YouTube. Catch us on our website, twoguysinhockeytalk.com, through our YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. So just so you know, if you are catching us, I don't know how many, it's brand new. We just got set up on Twitch. Brand new. So thanks to Pavel for getting that going. We don't know Twitch very well, so we're going to learn about you guys, and we're going to figure out how to have fun with all the Twitch followers. So I don't know. I have some rhymes that
can we make dad jokes now? We're going to give you guys the Twitch. We're going to Twitch our way into
anyway, I am just twitching about next week. So anyway, it's as we say every week, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Could that just put him over the edge?
I'm not too sure. I don't think they did well.
He's a bully.
I'm just to break the tide. I'll live, I'll die, for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
They still have a lot of holes to fill.
He didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. No, he didn't get fired. He never got his contract renewed.